Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we seem to have had some difficulty with our flight. Our in-flight entertainment was briefly interrupted whilst we prepared for our landing. If people can join us on this particular channel, then that would be most appreciated. I hope that some people can begin to join us in the live group for part two. My screen entirely froze. We had some severe turbulence. I've had to take off from the airport and circle round again, so I hope we've got enough fuel to last another circle around the airport and find our landing slot. So could anyone tell me in the cabin crew will come along and find out from our passengers as to when the turbulence started? How far had I got into my spiel when it froze for most people? Because it just carried on as if I was live here. I didn't even get any comments to tell me that there was turbulence. So if I might just start from the beginning and see how we do. So as I was saying, I think there is a special announcement to follow. Yes, we will come to that. So right, I'll start again from the beginning and we'll see if we can make this work a second time, because it was going to be very experimental anyway. So here we go. Let me start again and see if I remember where we were going. Yeah, it's always difficulty when landing a plane, but there is one most important thing that a pilot has to do in the 50 feet before actually touching the tarmac. And in fact, it isn't 50 feet from touching the tarmac, it's 50 feet from a very particular place. And it's just above the vanishing point between where the aircraft loses the ability, or the pilot loses the ability, to see the gap between the aircraft and the landing strip itself. And at that point, there's a very particular point where we have to do something very important. And the autopilot helps with that, no matter what sort of flight or plane or journey it's been. But for us passengers, we can often not need to know what all of the strange sounds or activities or actions are on an aircraft. We just have to enjoy the journey. And sometimes in a journey, there are many things where we meet challenges, like our in-flight entertainment pausing because of the turbulence, or it may be that we have other challenges, and sometimes those challenges we can prepare for by packing correctly, and sometimes we have to face those challenges as they arise, and we don't know when we travel what sort of challenges that they may be. However, it is entirely possible that we draw upon certain resources that we're able to find deep within ourselves, resources that we didn't know we had until we wake up to the challenge that is presented to us in every moment. And as long as we take a moment to understand from the resources that we have available to us when meeting these challenges, that there is indeed a lesson that can be learnt when we come to reflect upon it. Just like we covered in the format system, and we covered in teaching beginners to read tarot by showing them a picture and asking them to decide what was the challenge, resource and lesson, as if that picture on the tarot card was a picture in your favorite book as a child, when it was full of those bright, vibrant illustrations that you can still remember sometimes the texture of the book, or perhaps you coloured it in or drew your own name in the book. Who knows what you might have done when you were that young to know that there was a story inside every book, and there were lots of books that you had not yet read, and look forward to learning how to read and opening those curious adventures that might be in any book that you wanted to ever choose. And when we arrive from our flight, we are going to be reminded perhaps of all of the dreams that we've had over this time, because you, like me, may have been having many curious and strange dreams. And only this morning I woke up and thought that I had visited a place called the House of You, spelt Y-U. And I thought, wouldn't that be a great place to visit, the House of You? And I thought that that would be a good name for the special announcement that we have to make, and we've been planning for a couple of weeks and thinking about, and the House of You would be a great name for it. However, I then looked it up and found that in New York there is a place already called the House of You. And so I then started to think that maybe it would be like a saloon. And I thought, yes, it could be You's Saloon. And I looked that up, and I found that there was a storybook written by an author who passed away a little while ago, and it was called The Gate of Noon. And in his story, The Gate of Noon was a thing called the spiral, and the spiral allowed people to travel between different worlds. And a ship was found traveling between the different worlds and sailing across the spiral like a plane sails across the clouds. And when some people entered the ship, they found a saloon in it that was called You's Saloon, because the name of the ship was Lung Yu. And so I found that described exactly as I dreamt about. And so I thought that it would be possible to create a place called You's Curious Saloon and Reading Room. And it would be a curious place because one of the things in that saloon, as you're going to find out very soon, is that there is a big picture of a mountain, a vast mountain with a singular tree on top of it, a very important tree that is like at the center of the garden of all of the worlds and the spirals that make up both dreams and waking time. And it's possible to think that in Norse myth there was a squirrel called Ratatosk, and Ratatosk the squirrel was a very naughty, very pesky squirrel that went up and down the tree, passing messages along the rainbow bridge of Bifrost. And the rainbow, as we know in Kabbalah, is Kesheth, spelt Q-S-H-T-H, Kof, Shin, Tau. And that makes the paths that make the cards of the moon, the world, and the last judgment of the people waking up from their sleep into a new world. And we have covered a lot of Kabbalah in all of the things that we have been doing. We have covered the Sephiroth and the paths, and we've covered all of the tarot cards and their attributions to the paths, and even gone on a journey up and down the tree of life as we forget to remember some of the more interesting things that we may even have forgotten to have remembered, when perhaps there's time yet to just remember how important it is to forget all of the things that we don't need to remember anymore, as we forget to forget even that it's possible to forget the things that we don't need anymore. And it's good to remember that. Remember that we can forget those things and forget our own forgetfulness of the things that there is still time to do. Because time is a curious thing when we're closer down the bottom of the well, finding our own spiral, finding our own point. The point of the tree of life is Kether at the top, paired with Malkuth, a 1 and a 0. Like the 1 is the stick of the fool and the 0 is his bag. So who knows what the dog may be? Because it's important to remember, I once had an NLP teacher who sat me down and told me a story. And I still cannot remember the story, although I do remember there being a dog involved. And it was a very life-affirming change that that story made in my life, even though I forgot to remember exactly what the story was. And that's something that is often called metanoia, when we have a loss, a forgetfulness of our very soul, as we saw with the story of the rebel in the soul, where he talked to his soul as a divine ass, and it answered unto him that sometimes he despaired of where he was going because his soul maybe wasn't quite enough to remember exactly how he could burn with that soul, as we saw with the burning egg in the pyramid in the Tarot of the Secret Dawn, as we approached through a path working within somebody else's idea of what the alchemy of the tree of life might be when we begin to change our lives, because it's most important to know that each of the Sephiroth is a change of state, and the paths that illustrate them are merely images that show us the lessons we need to learn, when it's possible to know exactly how the magician means success and how to activate that in our lives by knowing that we can work without lust of result. And it's possible to know that right down at the bottom of all things, that the alchemists knew the secret of the magician, that the philosopher's stone and our gold is time. Time is our gold, is our only philosopher's stone that we touch to every story, whether it's major, minor, or in court. For the court cards represent the levels of energy as we grow up and we begin to mature into individuated souls and become the people who we are meant to be and are, whether we let go of our shame, regret, guilt, or remorse. It's possible to know that we're free like the fool to be able to take a final leap. And the Gnostics knew this, for they thought our world was perhaps a matrix in which we were not able to act exactly as we might want to act, but we do know that when we act with our will. And even now it's impossible not to do the thing that you're doing right now. And it's possible to know that sometimes we can remember to know things that we had totally forgotten. For example, there was a time when you looked forward to something in the future, and that future hasn't happened just yet. But even now you can think back to that time, and knowing that before that time you hadn't even thought of what you would be thinking about in the future that still hasn't happened yet. And in a moment you'll be able to remember me talking about the thing that you hadn't yet remembered, to remember that there was a time that you hadn't even thought to know that that thing was still and still is now in your future, even if you know that there are oracular sentences that you can make, because the majors represent the sheer patterns of the universe, all of the paths which are like branches upon which the squirrel jumps from branch to branch, up and down the tree, so free, free tree, up and down, knowing exactly what it is, to not need to know exactly what you're learning as you learn it, because all experience is like that, whether it's in dream or wakefulness, or being able to wake in a dream, in lucid dreaming, or guided path working. These oracular sentences can take us, and one of the Gnostics once had an experience a long time ago where he saw everything freeze in front of him like a freeze frame of no movement. and no time. And he said, the clouds are astonished. They are hanging in the sky, because these patterns sometimes can be broken when we think in a different way, which is the whole process of initiation, to begin to believe that we can act in a totally new experiential way, having an experience that is more comprehensive, congruent and consistent than the one that we had just a moment before, learning all of the things and remembering all of the hours that we've spent perhaps learning linking words like and just because it may be possible because just may it be able to pivot able be whatever you want you whatever. It's possible now possible it's to know why know it, because it just because it is so is able to be able to experience anything that you want in an experimental journey, where you are not even begin to remember all of the invisible cities that we have all passed through together, those cities of dream and wakefulness, and all of the cities that were spoken of were perhaps the same city seen from different times and in different ways. Like a jewel, it's possible to be able to see all of the letters that make up the very divine nature of the universe in different patterns as we turn it in our mind, like a dice that we can see from all sides at the same time, and just be able to know that we can stop time for a second and be able to relax into the deeper states where it's always possible to find those things that align congruently to the things that we know are true and real and authentic, and begin to remember all of those things that we learnt as Lola Daydream woke up with her fairy prince and began to approach the wake world, where in a moment we can land and find You's curious saloon and reading room, all for ourselves, because that will be made as a Facebook group in which we can begin to discuss on a regular basis some of the books and ideas and concepts that lurk just beneath the tree, just at the foot of the mountain, to begin to pack ourselves and be able to know exactly what it is that the pilot needs to know just 50 feet before the gap, that thin, straight and narrow way, and few there are that find it, that crosses the abyss between the known and the unknown, that crosses all of the veils of the temple. Because when the fool sets off on his journey, he might meet the magician and the high priestess, but he owes his allegiance to nature and power and religion and belief and all of the things that make the things of the world in which the soul enters and passes through, till eventually there is only the world at the end of the journey, and we know in time, just in time, to know that we can find ourselves in time. To find oneself in time is the most important thing to remember, to forget the magic of the journey that we have been on through all of the minor cards, whether it be the world of Malkuth, the world of Yesod, the world of Hod, Netzach, Tifreth, Gibora and Hased paired together by the lion of strength, roaring like a jet engine as we begin to fall from a high journey, but knowing that we have only gone a little way perhaps to find ourselves piloted in light, because it's possible to even chase the world around and beat the sun at midnight and find ourselves in strange temples. And whether it's a dream of knowledge, of nature, of beauty, of awe, or of love, we eventually reach an abyss and a gap of knowledge that we're able to pass through into the crown and the triangle that make up the world, because numbers can sometimes be more important in the minor arcana than it's possible that you even yet remember to know, because when everything is at an ace, it is merely the seed of all of the things that we have yet to discover. And as the pilot slowly makes his point of landing and looks down out of the cockpit, we're all able to listen with him to the autopilot that says 50. And then it says this one thing: decide. And at that point, the pilot must decide, does he land? Is it safe? Is the plane aligned? And at that point, he has to decide, because it is 50 feet above the point of decision. And we are now 50 feet above our point of decision as we prepare to make a final landing tomorrow. And I'll be able to direct you through the aisles, and the lights will go on and the exits will be marked, so that we can begin to know exactly all of the places that we can learn to go from here, whether you're interested in numerology or Kabbalah or Gnosticism or alchemy or tarot or the Sephiroth or the paths or the storytelling or the NLP, or any of the things that we have begun to touch upon in our time together in this incredible journey that we've all shared with each other over the plains of Lockdownia. And as we enter into the new normalia, then we will be able to visit and meet up time and time again with Use Curious Saloon and Reading Room. We have made a Facebook group, which I'll put a link to, and what we're going to do is have it as an adventurers central, as a explorers society, that if you want to find time to talk to other people about anything in your journey, then feel free to hang out in Use Curious Saloon and Reading Room, and we'll be able to discuss our books, which I would like to do in future, that it will be a place where we can meet up, and once a month probably, if not a little bit more, I'll run a live session so that we can discuss and practice, and perhaps have a reading group as well, so that we choose a book of choice, obviously preferably one of our books, but sometimes perhaps another book of our choice, and discuss it together. And that would be good to do in the future in a very informal way, and people can come into the saloon and reading room and leave it, and there will be I've been reading about some of Facebook's new features for Facebook rooms, and we can set those up in a group so that they act as a permanent open place that people can go into and meet up and see who's there, Maybe some of your friends will be there, maybe not. Maybe you can arrange to meet at certain times. Maybe we'll arrange to have regular meetings there. Who knows what it would be. So I will probably link the videos into that, because I'm going to port them all. There's 41 3/4 hours videos. I worked out that I think if we'd have charged, say, £5 a person per video and had about 30 people watching each one, it would have been about £15,000 of income by now. So I am going to make sure that I download them to the computer, which I've done 50 of them, and then I'm going to put them onto Sprout or something like that. And the interesting thing is that the use Saloon in the book Gates of Noon, I dreamt of only this morning, and found that the description of this sort of opium den like, a bit like the Raven in Nepal, which is in the Indiana Jones film, it was very much a dive like that was found, that was described in the book, and it's exactly what I dreamt of. I'm not putting them on YouTube because I want them somewhere special, somewhere where people can discover them and suddenly realise that there's 40 hours of me burbling on that might be of interest to them. You know, and it's I like nowadays. I think the whole idea of intrigue and mystery is a long lost commodity, And so, like with Arcadia, for example, there is something like 5 books worth of material and 10 years of planning that is hidden behind just 10 lines on a web page. And so when people go into that, they won't be aware that there's like literally 10 years worth of work over a 1-year experience for them in Arcadia. And we argued with other folk when we were designing it as to what we should promote and advertise, and we should share what people were going to get for their money and so on. And we sort of did that to begin with, but it wasn't what we wanted. What we wanted was a mystery, something that would open it up as you go along. And we have a lot of places to point you to, obviously, where there are fees, registrations, subscriptions, book purchases, and so on. So we do have things to sell, obviously, but we want to make the Saloon, Curious Saloon and Reading Room, a sort of free place that acts as a outer spiral or hub around all of these other things that we have on an ongoing thing. Because the Tarot Association is basically for tarot, Magica School is basically for witchcraft and spellcrafting, the Crucible Club is for the esoteric stuff, but we don't really have anywhere for just us, just people bimbling along and finding out what's going on. So use Curious Saloon and Reading Room will be where we have landed, or not where we've landed, it's somewhere where we can go once we have landed and started exploring. So tomorrow in our final session, I'm going to just point out books, reading material, websites of ours that you can go to if you're interested in following up on certain things. And I'm going to put the link to the Saloon in the thread here in a moment as we finish off for today. And just because I love to teach, obviously, so that was a demonstration of something called the Lankton's embedded metaphor. It's one of my favorite hypnotic techniques that I sometimes use when I'm working with a client. And if you listen to the client's stories, you can then weave the stories back into a very structured embedded metaphor that leaves um, open-ended stories coming down one way, and then you close off each story as you come back up the other way, and you embed the thing you really want to say past the conscious sensor right down at the bottom of opening all of these links. And you also put in a level of confusional language, which was the when you forget to remember the things that you remember to forgot, or temporal confusional language just before you do that, to really embed the message in all of the open and closed stories. And so it's called Langton's Embedded Metaphor, and I just quickly sketched out what I was going to do from the pilot all the way down to the alchemy at the bottom and then back up again, just before we started this session, just so I knew roughly where I was going to, and not to forget to mention Wise Saloon as well. Excellent. Everyone is good to go. Thank you for being such excellent and considerate passengers on our trip. It's called Lankton, Lankton, Langton's embedded metaphor. Whether it's done quite the way I do it in its original form, I don't know, because I've modified it over the years. But yeah, well, as Sam's saying, we do have, like, for example, the Crucible Club and the Order of Everlasting Day. We were only literally saying today, the Order of Everlasting Day is a group for those of us who have never joined groups and don't like running them, and yet see the advantage of being in a group at the same time, and certainly don't like joining them. So we do have places to go where you can join in without necessarily having to follow the particular, sort of party line or anything else. That's one bad thing, I think, about the whole idea about tarot tribes. When people say, I found my tribe and stuff, it's problematic because it sounds good, tarot tribe, it has alliteration, but that's it, because a tribe is defined by having singular laws, one chieftain, and you're expelled if you don't follow what the tribe have as their hard and fast rules that are usually traditional and unchanging. So a lot of people who talk about finding their tribe and joining a tarot tribe, I think, don't really understand the word. And unfortunately, quite often they are tribes, and that's not something we would want to ever emulate or even be involved with. So thanks a lot for your time and attention. I'll put the link to use. There's a little fun thing as well when you join, when you come in to use Curious Saloon and Reading Room. So I hope you explore that and enjoy that. And we'll be making a lot more of that as time goes on. So thank you, and we'll meet up tomorrow one final time as we taxi along the airport before we disembark, so that I can give you a few signposts around the airport to make sure that if you're interested in picking up a few things like the gift shop, it's always like you're forced through the gift shop at the end of the museum or something. So we're going to do something like that tomorrow. So it's entirely optional if you've already picked up more than enough than you can carry. Thanks a lot. Bye for now, and I look forward to having more time to get to know you, discuss things with you, and so on in the saloon as we go along. Bye for now. Oh, and we have a very special gift made by, and I've just forgotten his name. That's a terrible thing. That's because I've confused myself. But I'll remember it for tomorrow. But someone's done us a very nice piece of artwork for tomorrow. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye for now.